The hardest part wasn't hearing my wife say she no longer respected me. It wasn't watching her roll her eyes every time I spoke. And it wasn't even when she laughed in front of her friends and said, "Tom would never leave me." Everyone smiled. Some even nodded, because they believed it too. After all, I had spent 11 years fixing arguments, apologizing first, and holding our marriage together. But that night, I realized something. People only keep taking your loyalty for granted when you never show them it has limits. So I smiled. I stood up quietly, walked to my office, and returned with a folder. Inside were the house papers, and when Isabella saw whose name was on them, for the first time in years, she stopped smiling. Chapter 1, The Joke That Wasn't Funny. My name is Tom Walker. My wife Isabella had always been confident. When we first met, I loved that about her. But over the years, confidence slowly turned into something else. Control. Everything had to be her way. Where we vacationed, who we spent time with, even how we decorated the house. If I disagreed, Isabella would laugh and say, "Tom, you worry too much." Or worse, "Relax, you're not going anywhere." At first it sounded playful. Later it became a habit. Then one evening, during a dinner party with friends, someone joked about marriage. One friend said, "My wife always threatens to leave me." Everyone laughed. That's when Isabella raised her glass and said, "I never worry about that. Tom would never leave me." The room laughed. Then she added, "He loves this house too much." I smiled politely. But inside something changed, because for the first time I realized she didn't see me as a partner. She saw me as a certainty, like furniture, like a wall that would always stand no matter how badly it was treated. Chapter 2, The Truth About the House. Most people didn't know the story of our home. Years before we married, my grandfather had left me a small inheritance. I used that money to buy the land. Later, I built the house. When Isabella moved in, I wanted us to feel like a team, so I never talked about ownership. To me, love mattered more than paperwork. But after years of feeling ignored, dismissed, and taken for granted, I quietly met with an attorney. Not because I wanted revenge, because I wanted clarity, and clarity can be painful. That attorney explained exactly where I stood legally. For the first time in years, I stopped asking, "How do I save this marriage?" and started asking, "Why am I fighting alone?" Chapter 3, The Folder. The morning after the dinner party, Isabella sat in the kitchen scrolling through her phone. I placed a folder on the table. "What's this?" she asked. "House documents." She barely looked up. "Why?" I sat across from her. "Because yesterday you said I'd never leave." She laughed. "Well, you won't." I opened the folder. Inside were property records, legal documents, and one final page. A lease agreement for an apartment. Isabella stared at it. "What is this?" "I signed it yesterday." Her smile faded. "You're moving out?" "For now." She looked shocked. "You're serious?" "Yes." "Over one joke?" I shook my head. "No." Over years of feeling like my feelings were optional, the room became silent. Chapter 4, The Space Between Us. I moved into the apartment 2 weeks later. No screaming, no dramatic fights, no revenge, just silence. And silence can be louder than anger. For months, Isabella called, texted, asked mutual friends about me, but something had changed. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to convince someone to value me. I joined a cycling group, reconnected with old friends, started painting again. I remembered the version of myself that existed before. I spent years trying to earn respect from the person who should have given it freely. One evening, Isabella called. Her voice was softer than I'd heard in years. "I thought you'd come back," she said. I answered honestly. "I thought you'd notice I was leaving long before I packed my bags." Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Chapter 5, The Different Ending. 6 months later, we met at a quiet cafe. Isabella looked different, less certain, more thoughtful. She stirred her coffee and finally asked, "Did you ever stop loving me?" I looked out the window. "No." "Then why didn't you stay?" I smiled sadly. "Because love without respect eventually becomes loneliness." Tears filled her eyes. "I didn't think you would really leave." "I know." She looked down. "That was my mistake." I stood to leave. She asked one last question. "Do you think we could start over?" I thought for a moment. Then I said, "Maybe. But only if we stop treating love like something the other person will always give, no matter what." Months later, we didn't return to the same marriage. We built a different one based on respect instead of assumptions. Because sometimes the biggest lesson isn't learning how much someone loves you. It's learning that even the most loyal person has a limit. And Isabella never forgot the day she said, "You'd never leave me," because that was the day she discovered that love is strongest when it's appreciated. If you enjoyed Isabella and Tom's story, don't forget to subscribe for more powerful revenge and relationship stories. And tell me in the comments, what country are you watching from? Your support means a lot, and I'll see you in the next story.